In other words, the basic cultural structures of a commercial society, freedom, contract, and non-injury and property, limit what can be done within the confines of this existing paradigm. So when we say another world is possible, we are often told, well, but that is just the way things are, it's just the way things are. Surely there must be another world that's possible. That's the way things are. The world has always been like this, but what they mean is the world since the beginning of the Roman Dutch law, the Roman law system. This system that runs and creates alibis for many others. The world has always been like that. The world has not always been like that. There were other systems of jurisprudence. There were other philosophies. We are now told, since Ricardo, scarce resources. It's scarce. All resources are scarce, meaning we should run over each other's dead bodies to grab whatever we can. No! There were other metaphysics of economics, such as economics of plenty. African societies use that metaphysics, where the cup is always half full in an African village. It looks like it's poor, but the generosity is infinite. That was a different metaphysics of economics. Today, you go to an economics faculty, they start off making you remember what Ricardo said. Scarcity everywhere. Scarcity everywhere. Africa is a continent which swallows China, United States, Europe, India, all put together. There's still enough land left. What kind of scarcity is there? But scarcity everywhere. Scarcity, look. What all it takes is for a concrete program for rethinking the basis of economics itself, so that we are able to introduce other philosophies, other metaphysics into the thinking of economics. And I could go on in law, and I could go on in education, and I could go on in science. In fact, I'm already working on it. I can convene deans of faculties with their 45 law professors. And twice last year, I've done it. This is not theoretical. It's not hypothetical. This is an empirical task. It's not going to be possible. Pavlov's dogs are out of the cage. They want to discuss the nature of science. And there's going to be no way you push them back into that cage. When people tell you, it is human nature for inequalities to take place, no, no, no. The way things are is not the way things have to be. The systemic imperative that requires creating investor confidence in order to avoid capital flight or capital strike can be weakened and made far less imperative, far less dogmatic, and given its place in the scheme of things, but not its towering presence. The world is not. The world becomes. The world becomes, and we make it become. So don't underestimate the power you have to actually make that difference. Therefore, for me, in the chair I'm holding, and the associates that I work with, we ask the question, are we transforming the rules of the game that specify the rights and duties of everyone? Are caring human relationships sufficiently being elaborated enough to temper the contractual relationships which are so embedded in the psyche of our systems everywhere? Is freedom more about being self-directed and less about being self-centered? Are people being empowered to participate in the creation of a new culture? These are the kinds of questions. So when we start off from talking about racism, we have to immediately go to the things upon which racism rests ferments, germinates, and finds its alibi. It is not in the word racism itself. It is everywhere else except in that word. Racism is only the tip of an iceberg. We have to figure out the contours of the rest of that iceberg so we can know exactly how to go for the heartland of it. So if I do not talk too much of the race word, don't for a moment underestimate the meaning of what I'm saying. I'm engaging with a project for its dislocation. I don't have to say the word. I will work at the tenets on which it finds its alibis and shine light precisely there and there and there. And then we say, now let's talk. Because there will be no more dark corners for it to hide. You get me? You get me? What does this imply for this center? All these things I'm saying. The framing document of this center draws attention to the effects of colonial and apartheid rule on the socio-economic and political landscape in South Africa. It calls for the opening up of intellectual space for inquiry into and debate on racism, non-racialism, and their relationship with human rights and democracy. It urges for the fostering of progressive policies and social interventions aimed at addressing social transformation, both of the academy and the broader South African society. How shall I respond to the framing document of this center? I thought hard about it, especially last night. And I came out with a few points, which I'd like to share with you, 5 points, which can tell you how I was reacting as I sought to align my thoughts and my own convictions, and perhaps the bit of knowledge that I have. To lead this center and to get it to gel in practice, not only with this university, but also South African and African society at large, we need the concept of non-authoritarian authority to undergird every facet of the work of this center. What do I mean by non-authoritarian authority? We justify non-authoritarian authority by its ability to perform social functions. Social functions are significant because they are, in the end, physical functions, in much the same way that Plato justified the authority of pilots by their ability to steer ships gently and safely to port, and of medical doctors by their ability to steer patients safely to health. Sometimes you need to understand that the entities that perform the functions and wield authority are not persons like pilots or doctors, but it is words. Ideas do have a consequence. Ideas walk, ideas talk, and ideas act. Therefore, the manner in which the conceptualization of this center is going to walk, find its feet, and start to walk matters all the good bit, because it's easy to draft a framework document to figure out how those words are going to become what I call the non-authoritarian authority, which means they are capable of steering us all from a toxic moment to the space where we can breathe and embrace one another, to the place where there is joy, where there is laughter, where we find ourselves, even in our vulnerabilities. We need to figure out how the words we're talking can move us into that, acquire the kind of authority which can function the way a pilot does, with 300 people in the plane. Let the thing take off, hang 10 hours, sometimes even more, and still land safely. Following Ashish Nandi, my second point is that the transition from bandit colonialism through the intricate systems of a modern triage society that, as we all know, is wired for Western cultural compliance, requires more than just critique or a prayer for the meek to please inherit the earth. It requires a decisive consensus that the meek do not inherit the earth by meekness alone. They need defenses of the mind and conceptual categories around which they can organize their thoughts and actions. Turning previously colonized and brutalized people into participants in a new moral and cognitive venture against oppression requires more than just periodic elections, significant though that process is. Addressing the atrophy of human capabilities that is the consequence of the imposition of this default drive, that is Western compliance. And that has characterized human development in the context of both what I'm calling the bandit colonialism and the modern triage society, demands the development of plurality of insights, of critical traditions, and of deepening the tools for diagnosis and hence quality of prognosis. And it may even, in some instances, demand a cognitive indifference to the Western model. In some instances, just in order that you can breathe, sometimes you need to just open the window a little bit and say, let me breathe how other people think. They think differently. I thought all the ancestors of Europe had already finished thinking. And now we were just supposed to now implement it. I didn't know there was other jurisprudence. I didn't know there were other philosophies. Ubuntu, does it exist? It does exist. Plurality of insights and deepening the tools for diagnosis. A robust engagement with the tenets of knowledge production systems themselves, because it is not by coincidence that certain bodies of discourse is missing. You cannot discuss pain, anguish, suffering, humiliation in the normal sociological concepts of conflict and harmony. Hello? Evil. You cannot discuss evil under conflict theories. Hello? Where were sociologists when people were in anguish? Which theories capture humiliation? That most terrible, what I call the real weapon of mass destruction, is humiliation. Intergenerational humiliation will stand and it will bear me out. That is the least discussed thing in the academy. Even critical thinkers of the left, they don't want to talk about it. All they are talking about is labor and capital and all blah, 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 and shooting at capitalism. Humiliation. Humiliation, the pain, the anguish of experiencing abuse, which is society-wide. What is the intellectual response to humiliation? Third, from Adam Kahane, we get the insight that we need a deeper connectedness between our hearts, mind, spirit, and action, because opening our minds ultimately means opening our hearts and our wills. The path forward out of any situation is therefore about becoming more human, not just more clever, which is what we try to do in the academy. We sharpen our swords on how to chop each other down. You watch the academy, how they stab at each other. When someone tries to come with an idea, the first thing they do is to sharpen their swords. This one is thinking something, let them prove it. Let them prove it scientifically. Let them. They start looking for sticks, bazookas, missiles, stones, everything. We are the least progressive of all industries put together. We gang up, if we don't gang up inside the disciplines, we gang up inside our paradigms. And may God bless you if you don't belong to my discipline. Ooh, I can't even speak to you.